So welcome to Cushing Library and to our opening lecture for our opening night for the World's Imagined exhibit. So I'm Sierra Lattisaw, I'm the map librarian. This is Jeremy Brett. He is our science fiction curator, and we've put this collection together and kind of curated the exhibit together. So I was going to give you a little bit of history on the collection. So these are items that Jeremy and I have just kind of found scattered out there. So some of them come directly from the movie studios, fandom page, where you could buy, the Hogwarts map from Warner Brothers. Other of these are from artists who are selling their own interpretation of worlds on Etsy. Some of them are from artists like Priscilla, who are kind of doing the authorized work for the books. And so as we've gone out to look for these items to put this collection together, it's kind of been scrounging the web and going on a wild scavenger hunt. And somebody will come in and say, well, hey, do you have a map for Zelda? And I'll go, oh, no, not yet. Let me go find one. So it's kind of been this fun adventure of putting the whole collection together.
Yeah, we like to tell you it's for a comprehensive collecting strategy, but we don't. In the catalog, we say we think maps are cool, and that's kind of our guiding spirit in doing this, like what maps we think are interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so I get a lot of people who will shoot me an email for, Wired has a new article on some crazy new map out there, or Reddit's Imaginary Maps subreddit. All these places are really great inspiration to find these items. And then just a little bit on what we have on display. It's definitely not the whole collection, and the collection is going to continue to grow even after the exhibit's done. So if you're wanting to see what's not on display, some of it's here in Cushing, others are in Maps and GIS over in Evans. You're welcome to come in at any time and ask to see an item. We're happy to pull it out for you. And so we hope that as you explore the exhibit upstairs that you're going to kind of find areas that are this nostalgic moment for you, where you're like, oh, take me back to my childhood. I remember reading Redwall. Or I remember reading, The Hobbit with my parents, or however it might be. And find your favorite map. I'd love to hear what your favorite map is in the exhibit. Mm-hmm. We have a couple up there that we're big fans of. One of them is the map we've just been calling the Fairyland map. It has this really big, long, obnoxious title. But it's this beautiful piece that's kind of every little bit of mythos and fairy tale and folklore all included in one map. And it's beautiful. It's really large, so it's all in its own display case. Another one that's kind of fun is the oldest map on display. So it's California as an island, and it's from 1690. And so this is real-world mapping of North and South America, but kind of through this mythological mindset. It's definitely past the point where humanity knew California was not an island, but we were so enamored with this fairy tale of California is this island where these Amazonian women ruled and rode their griffins and had armies, and that's true. So we just kept producing these maps, even though we knew this wasn't reality. So that one's right there when you get off the elevator, and it's fun to look at. So poke around and let me know what you find really interesting. And we're happy to tell you what it comes from too. They're on the little placards, but the majority, not all, but the majority, Jeremy and I have either read or seen or played the game for. So we can talk with you about that also.
Semi-coherent.
So
I think what we're really hoping is, what I hope that all of you get out of this exhibit, if nothing else, is that you see a map, and that will encourage you to read or reread or watch or rewatch or play or replay the source material. Because I think that one of the great thing, joys that Sierra and I take in this collection is, she says the nostalgia brings us back to our youth, and a lot of these maps we encountered as children. One of my favorites is actually the map. There's a map of the Lands of Wisdom from the Phantom Tollbooth, which is one of my favorite books as a child and as an adult. And the map, I think it was one of the first fantasy maps I ever encountered. I just still find it fascinating. If you go up and look at it, those of you who remember the book, when Milo goes to the doldrums at the beginning, if you look at the map, the doldrums are like this long, very windy, sort of almost endless path until it finally straightens out and goes to Dictionopolis. I remember as a kid just tracing that, which I probably should have been outside more playing, but it was much more fun to stay inside and trace them out.
That's how you end up in libraries.
That's how you end up in libraries, yeah.
All right, I'm going to let you introduce Priscilla. Okay.
This I can do from notes, I'm sorry.
I thought it was written out.
Doesn't got memories. Before I introduce Priscilla, there are a few people we want to thank in particular for making this exhibit possible. Dan and Barbara Clinton for supplying much of the money for the catalog and other parts of the exhibit. Laura's Custom Framing and Myra's Framing, both of which have done remarkable work in framing everything you see. Susie Cox and her colleagues at the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library Museum for lending us the walls you see up there. Without those walls, we'd only have about half an exhibit. It's much prettier now that there are things on the wall. Most of last week looked like 2001. We had these giant monoliths, black monoliths sitting up. It was a little disconcerting. So it's nice to have things on the wall. The Glasscock Center for Humanities Research. We'd like to thank Martha Wells for loaning her maps of the 3 worlds from her books of the Roxora. So you will notice Martha's maps are up there, quite prominently displayed. Our student Caitlin B for helping out. Let's get up. Caitlin. Helping Sarah and I hang the maps, to give us a third eye so we know what things were straight, to help us with the placards, and Caitlin is also creating the text, special placard text for dyslexics, so that'll be handy. And Jeannie Goodman, our conservator, for doing such sterling work on so many of the maps, which are some of the maps you'll notice are a little more difficult than others to arrange. The Marauders map in particular takes a lot of ridiculously complicated support, so thanks to Jeannie for that. And with that. Priscilla Spencer, who is here. Priscilla is a native of Dallas, Texas, while she currently resides in Los Angeles, where she's received her MFA from the University of Southern California's School of Cinematic Arts. In addition to Priscilla's work as a fantasy cartographer, she's also a filmmaker. A student of digital media design at the University of Pennsylvania, Priscilla co-directed the film Zion and Nausea. Am I pronouncing it right?
Nausea.
Nausea. Okay.
Which one? Not Nazi.
Not Nausea. It's got a Z. And Nausea, which won the award for Best Undergraduate Short Film at the Greater Philadelphia Student Film Festival. She has written, directed, produced, and/or done production design for a number of other short films, including the 2014 horror film Ashes, the 2014 film Tomorrow, which in addition to a bunch of other awards and accolades, won the Audience Awards at the Film Out San Diego LGBT Film Festival for 2015. 2013 Unfinished Business, and 2012's Popular Science and the Mind of Maxwell Hamer, as well as the 2014 web series The Ice Queen. She's also worked as a 3D pre-visualization artist, working with a number of different major companies on advertisements. Priscilla has been, and still is, a cartographer for a number of different noted fantasy authors. 3 of her maps are in today's exhibits. Those include Kingdom of the Westlands, which is drawn from Sean McGuire's October Day novels, The Realm of Alera and the Barbarian Lands, that is from Jim Butcher's Codex Alera series, and Yggdrasil. We just learned how to pronounce that today.
Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, you know that? Whatever. And Yggdrasil and the 9 Realms of the Norse from Kevin Hearn's Iron Druid Chronicles. She's also been a continuity editor for several authors, including Jim Butcher, Sean McGuire, and Mary Robinette Cole. Priscilla is very charity-minded as well. She frequently sells prints for maps. It's partially to raise money for many different charities, including the Avon Walk for Breast Cancer and the online microlending site, Kiva. Yeah. She actually will have some of her maps and prints for sale out there in the lobby when the exhibit is done. Priscilla will be speaking to you today on the evolution of fantasy maps and what maps say about the cultures that they
Thank you so much. So thank you all so much for coming out tonight on this strange Thursday evening. I was expecting like there to be 8 people there, so this is incredible. I really appreciate it. Not that only 8 people would be interested in fantasy maps. It just always makes my heart happy to know something that I thought was sort of very niche and bizarre, and also kept me inside tracing the map of the doldrums from Phantom and Tollbooth when I was a kid, is something that is shared by a wider portion of the world. I actually got into fantasy map making for a very odd direction. In 2009, I was serving as a beta reader for the author Jim Butcher, who writes the Dresden Files as well as the Codex Alera. And it was time to write the last book in the series, and it's one of those series where you expect there to be a map in the beginning, but there wasn't. And Jim had heard, like, why isn't there a map? Why isn't there a map in signings, over emails, over message boards? Like fans, not at all like me, wouldn't shut up about it. But unfortunately, he'd lost his hand-drawn map of the series that he'd been referencing and moved years prior. So when it came to writing the last book in the series, and he decided that there should be a map in it, he asked his beta readers, including me, for assistance kind of reconstructing this map from his brain. I immediately volunteered and started, and I am a very, very type A person, in a way that the phrase type A does not really adequately prepare you. I am type AA, like you could use me to run your kids' Christmas presents off of. So I started, like, in addition to like rereading all the books and making notes of all of the geographic areas and like how long it took to get from point A to point B and which method of transportation they used, because there are a lot of varying speed options of transportation in this world, where there are hurricanes, where there's snow, where there's all of these things. But then I also started collecting images, like reference from areas with similar levels of technology, like other fantasy maps that I found to be very beautiful, or images from like Roman iconography that I thought would kind of feed into the general aesthetic of this world. And time went by, and Jim got a letter from his publisher wondering when the map was going to be done, because they were hoping that it might be included in the advanced reader's copy. And Jim said, "I thought you guys were going to find a map artist." And the publisher was like, "I thought you were going to." So he turned to me with this like ridiculous bevy of information and this very detailed like sketch, essentially, of this world, and was like, "You want to take a crack at it?" And I had something of a background in illustration. I majored in digital media design, and I took some illustration classes. And I like to think that my portfolio of Harry Potter fan art helped me get into that. But I didn't really think of myself as being a 2D artist. Like I worked as a 3D modeler at the time. Please someone with more experience. But Jim is one of those kinds of people that really that values like love and loyalty and appreciation of subject material more than necessarily. To say experience is probably the wrong word, but the resume, I guess. And so I realized, like, okay, I don't know who loves this series more than I do, and I am kind of an artist, so I'll take a crack at it. Okay. And so I continued with this level of research. I have no idea what page I am on this thing. Oh, yes. So for the next couple of months, I basically moonlighted as a fantasy artist, taking precious minutes from the time I got home from my 9 to 7 job and sleep to start putting together this thing. And I went way down the rabbit hole in many circumstances. I started trying to figure out, like okay, so we have like volcanoes here, and we have like islands here. Like, what are the plate tectonics of Alera? And like, oh, like there is a throwaway reference to a typhoon in like one sentence in one book. Like, what are the circumstances that cause typhoons to form? Like, what shape does this landmass need to be? Like, how far south in order to have tropical climate? Yeah, I was that person. But I ate a sandwich and I got a good night's sleep, and then I was fine. So after Jim and I established the geography of this world, the first big criterion that we encountered, like the first big decision that we made, was like, what was the point of view of this place? Because Jim is fundamentally a storyteller, and that like that insight into map making has served me so incredibly well over the course of my experience. And I don't think that I would be as good of a map maker if he hadn't like had that idea so long ago, that the map should exist in the scope of the universe, or in the scope of this story world. He thought that it would be fun that this map existed in the University of Alera Imperia, the capital of this realm, which is attended by all of the wealthy sons and daughters of the most influential citizens in this whole realm. And so it would look beautiful, but not like gripplingly ornate. I mean, it's functional, but also very aesthetically pleasing. And then it would also have the same biases and mindsets that these wealthy young students would bring to their education, essentially. I wanted to represent the main cities in this world that these kids would be coming from, like, very respectably, but Alera Imperia, the capital, like, that would be the grandest icon of all, to remind these kids, like, yeah, your parents might be powerful, but this is where the real power lies. Then I also, again, lost my place. Oh yes, but there was a problem with that. We wanted the map to be able to be included in all 6 of the books, But the first book takes place almost entirely in this little like backwater region called the Calderon Valley, that most of the populace of this realm like doesn't really think about, and we still wanted it to be represented. So I thought about it for a while, and I realized, well, there are two things in the Calderon Valley that people had better care about, or at least the First Lord, like the man that owns this university essentially, would want them to be sure that they knew about. There's the Fort of Garrison, which is basically like on this sort of bottleneck isthmus between these two continents that I should actually be consulting these at this point. So it's essentially a choke point between these two countries, or two continents, and that's where it's the sort of one fortress standing between their peaceful realm and potential invading Murat tribesmen. So you'd better know about Garrison. Then you'd also better know that the First Lord's son there is a memorial to his death in this area as well. So, okay, we have this at the east end, this at the west end, and oh, it just so happens that all of the major places that take place in the first book happen to fit within those geographical boundaries, yes. So I was able to justify having a blow-up of that area on this large map that was still intended for that populace. Then, in service of this sort of viewpoint, I wanted to depict the Alerans' relations with the outside world. The civilization started as this single legion of Roman and Germanic soldiers, mercenaries and camp followers, and they had to fight tooth and nail, that were mysteriously transported from Earth to this different world. Like because they had to fight for millennia to survive against the elements, other species that lived on this planet that didn't really want to share their meager land allotment with these Romans. So their whole culture is built around this very xenophobic type of attitude, like if you're different, you're the enemy. And so I wanted to depict the Canaan, which are these warrior wolves that often will like attack coastal villages. I wanted to picture one of their warriors like sort of menacing towards Alera, looking brainlessly savage as only propaganda can really depict. And then on the other side, one of these unlettered savage Murat. These Murat, they have these lifelong bonds with these totem animals.